Welcome to the Melanin Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Corey, and today we begin an important conversation as we step into April, which is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. This month is about more than just awareness. It's about breaking the silence, supporting survivors, and creating real change. Sexual violence impacts millions of lives, but too often in the Black community, it's met with blame, shame, stigma, or silence. But not here. On this podcast, we believe in healing, in empowerment, and in giving voice to the stories that deserve to be heard. Throughout this episode and this month, we'll explore the realities of sexual assault, the path to healing, and the ways that we can all be a part of a culture that supports and protects survivors. So whether you're a survivor, a supporter of a survivor, or someone seeking to understand better, I want you to know that you are not alone and your story matters. Let's have the conversations that need to be had. So let's listen, learn, and lift each other up. This is the Melanin Wellness Podcast. What's up, family, and welcome back to another episode of the Melanin Wellness Podcast. Family, I am so happy to have you here and so happy to be here with you as always, y'all. For my ride or dies, thank you so much for riding with me every single week. I appreciate y'all. Y'all help keep this show going. And for my newbies, welcome home. I am so glad to have you here with like-minded folks so that you can get a hold of this wellness knowledge. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of having a guest on the show. And what we're going to be talking about is something that I feel like never gets talked about in the Black community, yet it is something that many of us carry with us. And it is healing and learning how to trust after sexual trauma. So I do want to just give a little trigger warning for those who may still be, in the early stages of their healing journey, and this may be a little intense for them. I would suggest either you get someone to support you while listening, or you can put this one on the shelf for a little later, okay? But I love you just the same no matter what. But before we hop into our guest and this topic, y'all know how we do over here. We always begin every single episode with 30 seconds of gratitude. And as always, I always allow my guests to go first. Karimah, bless us with your gratitude.
Thank you so much, Corey, for having me. I am so grateful to have this opportunity to share with other women on their healing journey, that this is not going to define who they are, but this is just going to be one other chapter in their life, and that God has a plan for everything. And even though this is tough, that they still deserve to be happy. They still deserve pleasure, and they deserve to have peace and love.
I love that. Thank you so much for that gratitude. Family, I am grateful for healing. Being a survivor myself, I do understand how difficult the journey can be. So I am grateful for the healing journey that I have taken and the point that I have arrived at, because I am better than I was last week and 3 months ago and 6 months ago and a year ago. So I'm so grateful for being at this stage in my healing journey. I'm grateful for this platform because it allows me and my guests to be able to reach people who are not necessarily in our backyards, but still need this message that they are not alone. And I am always, always grateful for y'all, my listeners, because we have this community and this family that I wouldn't trade for anything else. So for you, I am grateful. Now, y'all already know that was more than 30 seconds because it always is, but it's all good. I always say that, practicing gratitude is not ignoring the things that you've dealt with or the things that you may be dealing with. It's not ignoring that. It's not saying it doesn't exist, but it is simply showing you and demonstrating to you that even though you've been through that, look at where you are now and be grateful for how far you've come and how much you've already healed in the process. And then it opens up the door for more healing. Right? All right, y'all. Now, today, I have the distinct pleasure to have the very beautiful Karimah Cornelius-Stith. And I already know who she is, but I'm going to allow her to give you all a little introduction of herself. So, Karimah, please introduce yourself to my family.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me. Melanin Wellness Podcast community. I'm so happy to be here. I am so many things, but I am a wife. I am a daughter. I am a U.S. Virgin Islander. I am a Marylander. I am a therapist. I'm a certified ASEC sex therapist, and I'm also a specialist in anger management. Overall, I love God, but I also want to help people to be their best self. And that especially means helping women who have been hurt and who are going through their own journeys to reclaim their power and their healing and their pleasure.
I absolutely love that, y'all. I told y'all I already know who she was. So today, family, we are going to be talking about the fact that there can be wellness and trust after such a violation. There are so many of us who bear this scar. Statistics show that 3 out of 4 women have been a victim of some sort of sexual violence. And, whether it was in childhood or as young adults, no matter where it occurred, but 3 out of 4 women. So think about that, 75%. So if you see 4 women together, 3 of them have been sexually violated. That is a staggering statistic. And I wanted to shine a light on this because this is not something that we as a community talk about.
Not at all. Not enough.
Yes. And it can create such fractures in interpersonal relationships. And so I think it's important that we talk about it. So Karimah, you've been in the field for over 20 years. How has your approach to therapy evolved over time, especially regarding sexual health and relationships?
Well, it's definitely evolved because within my work, I've had the opportunity to volunteer. I remember several years ago being asked by a friend, actually a minister, who started a ministry at the church that we were attending, Greater St. John Cathedral, to help women who have been sexually abused. Phenomenal interest, and I was very supportive and honored to be asked to be the professional liaison. But I realized, although I had so much years of experience, that I still felt quite inadequate when they were having their support groups. And I had an interest to learn more. And attending a workshop on sex therapy, I realized that this was it for me, that this would be a perfect way for me to not only learn about how to help people enjoy a healthier sex life, but to help people heal from trauma. So it was definitely a time of learning and growing. So over these past 6 years, the shift has changed from not just general, because I see people for anxiety and depression, but I definitely see a good amount of clients who specialize in just sex therapy. And oftentimes, both men and women, which was, I guess, very surprising for a lot of people, a lot of Black men came forward when I got certified asking for help because they identified as sexual abuse survivors themselves, especially in their childhood. So this is not uncommon in our community. It's just that we need to break the silence.
I agree with you completely because, oftentimes Black men do get lost in that sexual violence talk because it is not considered as, taboo or as a quote unquote a big deal when it comes to Black men, when it is very much a big deal. Because as I told somebody else, as a matter of fact, I was on another podcast and they asked me to identify trauma, and I told them trauma is anything that changes you.
Absolutely.
And so young Black boys are being violated as well. And it's important that we as a community do not overlook that, because just like it affects us, it's going to affect them down the line, especially when they do not get the help that they need for it.
Absolutely. Because I see them in adulthood struggling in their romantic relationships with their self-esteem and even with their own gender identity.
Wow.
So it does have a ripple effect. And if it's not addressed, we all the different things and ramifications that women experience, because there are so many times that it seems as if it's okay for women to seek help, but it seems so taboo for men to. But the people who have violated them have been people who they've trusted. It's their aunts, it's babysitters, people that the parents never even suspected that betrayed their trust.
Yes, I agree. And I'm so glad we're having this conversation. And again, we're including Black men and young Black boys in this conversation because they definitely are victims as well. Now, when you founded New Reflections Therapeutic Services, like, was your vision for it to not only help women, but also to help men? Or was that something that just came about as you began to grow within your practice?
Well, I always include men. Matter of fact, I was laughing and say my favorite color is pink. And the only reason why I didn't color the office pink is because I didn't want the men who come in to feel uncomfortable. I said, aqua is very calming. I do
Very.
aqua, light green, which everybody seems to be neutral enough that everybody loves. Funny enough, Corey, when I started, my mom actually has a clip of, I think somebody quoted me from my either high school or college graduation saying that I wanted to focus working with children. So I laugh sometimes when I think of that because things have changed so greatly. Because when I started the practice, I started working with children, doing children's groups, doing ADHD groups. And then I realized, even though I love children, working with the parents was difficult. And I realized I really enjoyed working with adults and doing more couples work. And I said, okay, I decided to take on more clients doing these things and realized that when it came to the sex therapy, that was it for me. It was just a lot.
It's funny because in some ways you still are working with children because when we are violated, especially as children, part of us is stuck there. Yes, part of us is stuck there until we are able to heal that part and kind of grow that part of us up. So, so in some ways, you kind of still are working with that inner child that was left, that felt left and abandoned, all that time. So many survivors of sexual assault struggle with intimacy, like you touched on earlier, both men and women. So what are some of the most common emotional roadblocks that you find that they're facing?
Well, it's all about the shame, self-blame, feelings of guilt that they did not fight back, that somehow their bodies betrayed them. But that's not fair. It's for people to realize that when we are in a traumatic experience, our bodies and our brain kick into survival mode. And whatever you did or did not do wasn't a result of you, that your body took over in order for you to survive.
Right.
And it's not about you blaming yourself, but about being able to allow yourself to change the narrative and put the blame on the person who violated you.
Yeah. And that is a common theme that you hear amongst survivors that, they felt like their bodies betrayed them in some form. But, I was just having this conversation last week with someone and I was like, the thing about being sexually violated that many people don't understand that your body cannot tell the difference. It just knows that it's being stimulated. So your body can't tell.
I don't call it stimulation. I call it manipulation.
That's a good word for it.
It's manipulation, not stimulation.
Yeah. But when you're being touched in a certain way, your brain does not know the difference between, hey, I'm being violated or I'm interested in this interaction. Like your body does not know the difference. It is just reacting and operating the way that the body was designed to operate.
Corey. It's just our natural reflexes. It's important for people to be educated as such, because without that, the stigma and the self-blame continues, because I think that's what the perpetrator does. That manipulation. Well, obviously you wanted it, because if you didn't want it, then why would you get lubricated? No, our bodies are reacting in the way that it's supposed to react. And oftentimes our body even react in that way to brace us for the discomfort or pain of what's to come, the trauma. So it's remembering that our rational brain and our body is just responding to the trauma, and it's not us. And arousal never means consent.
Right. So how can survivors begin to separate the past trauma from present relationships, especially when triggers arrive arise, because often, when you're in these, again, we just talked about this, when you're in your intimate settings, your body doesn't know the difference. And sometimes there are certain things that are going to trigger certain responses because
Absolutely.
physiologically it's just the same in your brain. So what can survivors do to separate the past traumas from present relationships?
That's a good question. Is learning to be able to be more in touch with your body. Oftentimes, a lot of survivors disassociate in
Mm,
order to get through that experience and also the triggering of new experiences. I think one of the most important things before we even touch as to what to do is it goes into the importance of picking the right partner.
mm,
Picking a safe and supportive partner, I think, comes first, because that person will be able to take their time and be able to be loving and patient as you go through this journey of healing. Because
okay. No, go ahead.
if we are picking the wrong person and you're trying to open up or you're trying to share and that person is dismissive or is unkind or only focus on their pleasure, you're just re-traumatizing yourself.
Mm,
And, oftentimes that is what happens. The trauma continues because individuals are picking a partner who is either emotionally unavailable, or just extra controlling, that they are not able to really flourish in their journey. Picking the right partner, I think, is ideal first when we're thinking about being intimate, but
okay,
also,
okay.
but also it's important for us to do the work. You can do therapy, do some more somatic therapy that helps tap into your body. Dancing helps to be more in touch with yourself. Also, self-soothing helps, doing things that help to bring you back into your body and being more present. Because oftentimes when you're disassociating, it's as if you're removing yourself and you're looking at yourself. So it's kind of just making sure that you're being more present so you can actually be able to enjoy these sensations that you're supposed to have pleasure with.
Right, right. So when it comes to picking a safe partner, one of the things that is going to be super important, I'm definitely assuming, is communication, because communication is crucial for any relationship, but it is especially so for survivors. So how can survivors effectively express their needs and their boundaries to a partner? Now, assuming we have picked a safe partner here.
Right. So first, if you care to share your story so they understand what your boundaries and your needs are. So first, finding a time that you feel safe to share. And you don't have to share every detail. You share what you're comfortable sharing with the person and you gauge what it is that you are noticing. Is this person dismissive? Is this person blaming? Or is this person supportive and just allowing you to speak freely? So then you'll know whether to continue or to retreat, basically. So communication is the key to, I guess, figure out if this is a red flag or this is a green flag. Is this time for us to pack up shop and go? Or are we going to proceed in getting to know this person on a deeper level?
So when they are communicating with their partners, for example, sharing their stories and communicating their boundaries and what's safe and what's comfortable for them, what advice do you have for the partners of the survivors who want to be supportive but may not necessarily know how? So how can they be supportive, and where should they start?
It starts with just prioritizing emotional intimacy and safety, realizing that it's important for them to feel comfortable with to share their story without feeling blamed, without feeling as if this information that they're sharing is going to come back again to haunt them, as if their partner is going to victimize them by repeating it, or that they are going to not be able to be respected when sharing this information. Making sure that your partner's desires or their feelings about it is known, like empathizing, showing that you do care, realizing that it's not about you in this moment, but that your partner needs to feel a level of safety.
Mm-hmm.
And
So,
verbalizing that you understand and that you care and that it was not their fault. Because if you hear that a partner is victim blaming, that already is, well, obviously you wanted it. If this is a partner saying this, that's a red flag in itself. I can't get any brighter. Retreat, retreat, get out,
yeah, we need to
get
turn
out.
around. We need
Yes.
to do a pivot real
Abort,
fast.
abort mission immediately.
Absolutely.
I mean,
So can
I've heard stories in which even like husbands, if a wife said, "Okay, don't touch me here because this reminds me of something that I've been through," and the husband was dismissive and said, "Well, that was in the past. I'm your husband now." It's not about what is in the past. If they're still being triggered, respect their boundaries.
Yes, 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 please, please. Because, like, at the end of the day, you really don't know what the reaction may be behind it. So, respecting someone's boundaries, if they're able to verbalize it and say, okay, right, I can't do this, then that means you got to stop right there. Whether or not they want to talk about it in the moment is not the point. We do not have to explore that at this point. Give them space and give them grace, and so that they're comfortable with coming and discussing these things when they're ready.
And that's no pressuring of intimacy, not emotionally, not physically.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So can you share more therapeutic techniques or exercises that help survivors to reconnect with their bodies when they're feeling ungrounded and maybe even dealing with a trigger and experience pleasure without the fear or the shame, which is absolutely huge for survivors?
So that's a good question. I like to do a simple grounding technique. So this helps people to realize that they're present, that they're right now, they're in a safe space. So when you're doing the grounding technique, you use your senses to kind of bring you back. So you look at 5 things, identify 5 things, identify four sounds, So then you kind of go down the list, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then you realize, okay, yes, I'm here in my body right now. So that's one grounding technique. With my couple, what I typically do is sensate focus. So it's like a massaging technique. So it starts with clothes on, covering the genitals, and they touch every part of your body just to create like a body map as to what are your responses when your body is touched. But you don't touch any of your genitals, any of your private area.
You know what? I absolutely love that. And y'all, I have talked about, I call it the Take 5 method. And I have talked about the Take 5 method on here many, many times before. I use it every time I get ready to fly because flying yes, the Take 5 method, 5 things that you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can feel, and 1 thing you can taste. And it disrupts those anxiety signals. So yes, I love the Take 5 method. And I love that couples thing. I love that.
Sensei focus.
Yes, I love that. I love
because
that.
then it kind of brings touch back in to make sure that you know that touch is safe. So Corey, I got a question for you. Since you asking me all the questions today, I want one question.
Okay.
How many hugs did you get today? How many hugs have you received or you've given in total?
Probably about 10.
You good. Okay. All right. That's awesome. So that's another way that we can heal. The power of touch is so healing. Give a hug, receive a hug. Dr. Virginia Satir says that we need at least 4 hugs a day for emotional stability. 8 hugs, right?
10. I had
And
10
then
today.
now it's 12 for growth, right?
Wow.
And connection. So you can imagine that. So many people, they may not even get 1.
Yes.
But hugging and kissing. And that's why I say finding the right partner is paramount, because we do not want that person to continue the trauma. So finding the right person that you can love on and can love on you, that helps greatly.
Absolutely. So now I have a question, because again, this is a topic that, again, we don't talk about enough in the Black community. And since we just spoke on triggers, I want to circle back to triggers just a bit, because many times, like you stated earlier in the show, many times our aggressors or the person who has hurt us is someone within our families. So can you talk to the audience about how to handle a trigger like that when you are in the same family and for whatever reason you got to see that person? How do they handle that?
Well, so many people handle it in so many different ways. Some people create healthy boundaries, which means that they don't come around or they confront the person. It depends on what your comfort level is. I think it helps a great deal if the person was supported by the other family members, but oftentimes they're not. When you think about 60% of Black females are sexually assaulted before the age of 18, and I believe that could even be higher, or it's just not reported.
Right.
And oftentimes we don't report. And why we don't report? Because of fear of not being believed.
Right.
So you can imagine that you being in an environment, maybe it's Thanksgiving dinner, and you looking across the room at this perpetrator,
Yep.
maybe close to your children. Oftentimes, especially mothers who have been abused, they're hyper vigilant around when their children are around that same time that they were first abused. They become very hyper vigilant, very overprotective, and fear that the abuse is generational and it will come to their doorstep too.
Yes.
So they try to break that cycle.
I can attest to that because I am a mom. And so, yes, I have been hyper vigilant about protecting my children from, what I had to live through, because it changes you. It really does change you. It alters who you are supposed to be. And like I said earlier in the show, you get stunted there, and we don't want to continue those generational violations. And it's also, I think it's important to also help partners of survivors to understand that even if it's a situation like what we just described, we don't necessarily need you to be a hero. That's not your job. Your job is to be there to support us, love on us, and help us to feel protected now. We can't do anything about the past. So we don't need you busting nobody upside the head. We love you for wanting to do it, but we don't need that, okay? So how can therapy help survivors heal in a way that empowers them to reclaim their sexual healing instead of looking at sex like it's a weapon or like it's something dirty?
Well, that's the whole point. Therapy is supposed to help you find connections, to break patterns, right? With what we're thinking and how we're feeling. Oftentimes, why people are experiencing a lot of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or a lot of anxiety, because they're holding that shame and guilt because of those thoughts of, I should have done more. My body betrayed me. I should have fought back. And not accepting that this is not their burden to carry. So accepting that this is not theirs, that they are in a safe place, and that their body did exactly what it needed to do for them to survive is important, and is one of the first steps.
Right.
And then tapping into their healing, realizing healing is not going to bring them back to who they were, but the healing journey is supposed to teach them who they're meant to be free.
That's
From
beautiful.
The stigma and the shame, and to embrace pleasure.
That is absolutely
it is
beautiful.
Their birthright.
Absolutely.
Pleasure
absolutely.
is so important. So important.
It really is, especially after you've experienced something in such a violent way. It is absolutely important to understand that sex is not dirty, that sex is not a weapon, that it is meant to be there for our pleasure and not just simply reproducing human beings.
Absolutely not.
And I think that so many of us struggle after violations to have healthy sexual relationships. So when someone is looking for a therapist, when they're seeking a therapist who specializes in trauma and sexual health, can you give me 3 things that you would look for to know that, okay, this person could possibly be a good fit for me?
3 things. Let's see. Someone who is sex positive, someone who realizes the Black woman's journey, because let's face it, we have been sexualized for most of our existence on this continent.
Yes.
And that realizing that even though that we have been sexualized, that we haven't had autonomy over our own body. So I would definitely try to seek someone who understands the Black woman's journey, and for someone who's able to realize that reclaiming pleasure is an act of self-love.
I like all of that because all of those are so extremely important, and especially the second one, where you need to have someone who understands you as a Black woman, because there are things that as Black women we experience that nobody else experiences.
No,
and,
not at
and
all.
because they don't understand it, like you may feel more traumatized in a therapeutic situation as opposed to
Absolutely.
it being healing. And we definitely do not want that. So it is definitely important to have something. I remember when I went to therapy, and it wasn't even for, my sexual assault. It was just because I needed to go. It's for the grief of my grandmother. And honestly, I had to find someone who could understand what
Mhm.
grandmothers mean
Yeah.
to the Black community. It's something completely different. And I do
Mhm.
not have time to be in here trying to explain it to you. Okay.
Exactly.
I ain't got time
Cultural
to be trying.
competence is real.
Correct. Yes, it is in every aspect, every single aspect. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So are there any specific books that you could think of, resources, groups, podcasts that you can recommend for survivors who are navigating this journey and looking for additional resources outside of their therapist?
So I definitely can. So I know that I've been in touch with a young lady, is Lee, and she has a support group called Save Me. And she's written several books. I think she's on her 8th or ninth book right now.
Ninth.
Ninth book. And she's doing great work with changing the narrative and educating people as to what sexual trauma really is. So I'll definitely plug her because she's and I believe in what she's doing in the community. There is also different books that I think are great just to tap into your pleasure. Some of them are written just for Black women.
Mm.
Book one that I like to say the reaction is called Pussy Prayer
Okay. I might have to get that one, y'all.
and Pleasure. So it's a line of books created just for Black women, for Black women. It's called Bliss. So I would
Mm.
definitely tap into that. And it's just to remind women in general that our pleasure is not for our partners, it's for us. And we have to have that positive anticipation mindset for sex in order for it to be pleasurable.
I love those resources, and all the resources of everything we are discussing in this episode will be in the show notes. But as many of y'all know that I wrote a book as well called Note to Self. It is talking about lessons on trauma and thriving in the aftermath. So I take you through the journey, my journey of healing from trauma and how that all came to be. And there's a podcast called Therapy for Black Girls that I would definitely suggest to the family. So we have some absolutely amazing resources for you guys at the end of this episode. So let's talk about your book, Chapters of Love, the book club. And it focuses on helping couples to grow together. So how does reading and discussing these topics support healing and connection for survivors and for the supporters of the survivors?
So that's a great question. This was a brainchild that I had a few months ago, sorry. I went to my husband and the idea popped in my head and I said, babe, do you think that people would be interested in a book club for couples? And he smiled and he said, I think that it's going to turn to a women's book club. And I said, that's not true. When I assign books to my couples, sometimes the men finish the book before the women do. And he said, that's a one-off. I said, no, it happens more often than you know. People are searching for knowledge.
Yes.
And I thought it would be a great opportunity for people to come together with like minds, to read books together and to discuss it. And we're on our second book. We just had a meetup because it's a virtual book club. So anyone and everybody can join. And we had a meetup. So we had dinner and we went to a comedy show. I actually just posted a picture on it on my social media today, talking about the importance of having community and support in your relationship, because it's important for us to learn together, to laugh together, and to grow together, because nothing is worse than growing apart. So
Yes.
if we're able to read a book and you've opted, I ask my couples to do the audio because it will be easier that you're lying in bed or you're driving and you could play the audiobook. And oftentimes it stirs up a discussion. Something comes up, something triggers you, and you press pause and you discuss it. And that is all the whole point of building up that emotional intimacy and feeling closer and more supported. And that often transfers into the physical intimacy and the sexual intimacy.
I like that because that just circles right back to when we were talking about how important communication
Yes.
is. Like whether you are, in this scenario, a survivor or supporting a survivor, or whether you have been blessed to never have that, communication in relationships is
Key.
absolutely key. Like it
Yes.
is critical.
It's all about building those bridges to love.
So what are some common themes that you see in couples who struggle with intimacy, and how do you help them overcome these challenges?
Well, the common themes are they're not being honest. Like for my men, oftentimes their wives don't even know what happened in their childhood. They're carrying that secret. And as much as we try to create a safe space, they have a safe space in therapy, they don't allow that safe space to be generalized in their home because they're convinced that their wives may see them in a different light. So for the wives or the female partners, oftentimes it's different. They're maybe more vocal about what has occurred, and sometimes we get supported, and sometimes there's still a myth, and sometimes they're not feeling as if they are feeling as understood as they need to feel. So there's a feeling of fear of being too vulnerable in their relationship. And I think that is also one of the different barriers to feeling close, because you feel as if you have to hold it all in. You have to be a woman. Realizing that it's okay to get support, to feel supported, to realize that you don't have to do it all by yourself, that there are people who love you and want to be there for you. And they may not understand, but if we are giving them information and tools, that they will eventually get it. I trust that their love for you will make them be empathetic and validate your experience and try to stand for you and support you in ways that you need.
So do you find that most couples, when they are communicating effectively, are able to overcome these challenges and continue to grow?
Absolutely. I'm actually talking at marriage summit in the next 2 weeks. And
Awesome.
the topic, thank you. The topic is touch, talk, trust, connecting with
Okay.
intimacy. So that is the whole key is, yeah, we want to touch, but we need to be able to talk too, because then the talking builds the trust that we need also.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And real quick, I want to circle back and say shout out to my girl, Leah. Y'all, Leah
Yes,
the bomb. Leah the bomb.
she
Okay.
is.
She's going to be on the show in a couple of weeks because we are going to be talking about something in this same topic. We'll be talking about a gala. So I'm really excited. So y'all
I'm
keep your
looking
ears
forward
peeled for
to
that one.
going. I'll see you,
Yes.
Corey. I'll see you
Yes,
there.
I'll be there. I'll be there. So what message do you want to leave with survivors who may feel like a healthy sexual relationship is just out of their reach? They haven't found a safe partner. They're still at the early stages of their journey, and they may just feel like, I just can't get over this. So I'm never going to have a healthy sexual relationship. Tell me, what is your message for them?
It's all about self-compassion. Be kind to yourself. Realizing that wellness is not about just having sex or to have a partner. It's about you feeling safe. It's about you feeling confident and in control of your body. It takes time. So it takes time for you to reclaim your sexuality and your power and your pleasure. So don't rush the journey. But first, be kind to yourself, realizing that you're human and what was done to you was out of your control.
Absolutely, family. Listen, please understand that there is no timeline on healing.
None.
There is no timeline whatsoever on healing. Remember, you're going to go through so many stages. You're going to possibly grieve the same trauma over and over and over again, especially when you begin to confront them. I spent my entire 2024 grieving all that I had suffered as a child, as a teen, and as a young woman. And so I can tell you that there's no timeline on it. And oftentimes the things that we think we've healed from often rear their heads again. And that's how we know we still got a little more work to go do. So can you tell the family if they would like to reach out to you, connect with you, like talk about that group? And if they would like to join the group, tell us about the group. That's what I want to know about. How can they join the group? Where can they find the group?
So Chapters of Love, we meet weekly on WhatsApp. We have a discussion question to keep the conversation going. So right now we are discussing We Over Me. This is a book that was written by the famous Ellises, Kadeen and Deval Ellis. And we pick themes from the book to discuss and to share so we can apply to our lives. And monthly, we have a virtual meeting via Zoom that we are able to discuss it in detail. So
Awesome.
if you are interested, you can feel free to reach out to me via my email, anewreflectionforyou@gmail.com. And in addition, I do have a couples intensive called Building Bridges that is coming up in April. So if you are in the Maryland, DC, Virginia area, we would love to have you. A couples intensive learning how to love each other by mastering your emotions.
Awesome.
Because
Awesome.
it's hard for us to connect sexually if we're always angry. So we need to be able to control ourselves and communicate clearly what our needs are. Oftentimes when we are angry, it's not that we're angry, but we're really afraid, we're scared of losing someone or something. So it's about learning ways to manage our emotions so we have small ripples and release the tension so that we can strengthen our love. So if you're interested, please join us. It's April 12th at the Holiday Inn Express in Laurel, Maryland. And if you need any details, the information is also on my website at www.anewreflectionforyou.com.
Absolutely amazing, family. Y'all heard all those amazing resources. And like I said, it will be in the show notes. Karimah, thank you so very much for coming on to the Melanin Wellness Podcast and blessing the family with these very valuable jewels. I appreciate having you.
Thank you so much, Corey. It's a pleasure being here. And I hope everyone who's listened that it's a blessing for them also. Thank you.
Yes, agreed. So that's it for us today, family. We appreciate having you here so much and thank you for tuning in. Again, all resources will be in the show notes. Take care, family, and I will see you next week.